Hello, and welcome to the Tidal Cyber Fireside Chat series. We've got this covered, an attack coverage introspection. In this series, what we're doing is talking with a bunch of people from industry, people with experience using using attack as a method to understand their coverage, to get their thoughts and feelings around how exactly to use attack, right? That's a complicated concept and topic. And so talking to people that are living, breathing this stuff on their day-to-days hopefully will help you as the listener kind of learn a little bit about how to use attack more effectively. And so today with us, we have Jeremy Brown from Trinity Cyber to discuss his lessons learned in using attack and communicating and mapping to attack. And really anything else he wants to talk about under this broad spectrum of attack. With that, Jeremy, why don't I hand off to you? You can give a little bit of an introduction to yourself as well as inform the listener about what Trinity Cyber does.
Yeah, sounds great. First of all, thanks for having me. It's really great to be here today. I'm excited about the launch of Tidal, and I've been participating in early access for a while, so you guys are doing great things. I'm Jeremy. I lead threat analysis here at Trinity Cyber. I do quite a few other jobs too, being that we're a smaller company, but I also did the mapping in Tidal's platform, and that taught me a lot. So in general, what Trinity Cyber does is we're a team of really talented people who have built technology to solve some really hard problems in cybersecurity. One of the first problems we set out to solve was I've heard people describe that network defense isn't really cool anymore, and what they really meant was that people had kind of given up on prevention. And so what we built was a core inline network threat prevention system that is hosted in a private cloud that we run for clients, so fully managed. That's been cool because I lead the analysis team that powers that. So day to day, there is a word that I use. It's called formula. And a formula for us really means on any given day, it's a rule, a signature, or a heuristic, and we can do all three with our syntax. But it's been a really powerful technology that we've built, and my team behind it has really provided a lot of value to our customers. And that kind of brings us up to MITRE ATT&CK. I've followed it for a long time. In truthfulness, I skipped on it for quite a few years because it was very much like endpoint focused. And I looked at it and I said, well, I am a preventative network defense company. How does this apply to me? And but it got a lot better, and I really applaud the community and the collaboration. And there's a lot of people who realize that it needs to focus on both endpoint and things that could be network available or network observable, and in our case, things that we prevent inline.
So I think that's a really, really valuable point that you're bringing up, right? So one of the fun facts about attack is that it was built on research that was specifically trying to show value for endpoint detection, right? So it was founded on a project that was trying to use endpoint data, and so there was a little bit of perhaps bias, whether it was purposeful or not, to endpoint information. And so I really appreciate the fact that you guys are taking part in Tidal and our registry that we'll talk about in a little bit. Because I think that network does need to be represented, right? Because it's not about one solution. It's about how a bunch of solutions can come together and answer questions, and network is a big contingent to that. And so from that point, like, how does Trinity use MITRE ATT&CK today? How do you guys generally think about it when posed with the question about how do you handle attack, or how do you address these attack behaviors?
Yeah, for us, it's really the story is how early on in the attack life cycle can we catch it and prevent it. And so you'll see, like, basically how does Trinity Cyber use attack today is every single formula that my team develops, which is a combination of a detection and an action inline. And we do really cool things beyond block and alert, like remove and replace and modify payloads. So we have the capability to do that transparently. Just, the adversary isn't aware that we're there. And that technology is really powerful. But when you talk about what are we using MITRE ATT&CK for on a daily basis? It's develop a formula and then tag it out with MITRE ATT&CK. So we go to the tactic, the technique, and the sub-technique level. We basically go as far as it makes sense to describe the threat. And a good example is when somebody says Emotet or the malware family Emotet. Well, to us, that might mean we're trying to stop Emotet in its initial access. So how are spear phishing documents and spear phishing links with Emotet contained? What are the techniques in there? What does that file look like? How can we get into it and prevent it? Other things like that. And then it might mean things like actual delivery of the binary. And so that's another challenge for the team. Hey, when we have the delivery of an Emotet binary over a network session, what are we doing? And how are we detecting it? And then it goes all the way to other things like command and control and data exfiltration. So for us, MITRE attack tagging is a really broad spectrum, and what we use it to do is sort of track ourselves on how are we doing this and how are we mapping to attack. And then in turn, our customers really value us being able to tell them exactly what we have covered. And so that brings up, like, I'll just say our highlights right now. In tactics, we really have strong coverage in initial access, execution, and defense evasion. Defense evasion is one of my favorites because we cover things like payloads, obfuscation, hiding stuff in steganography, in fake certificates, other stuff like that, like really fun techniques. We've got techniques like phishing and public-facing exploitation, and then user execution. So literally when a user opens up a file, what happens and how can we prevent them from ever getting that file? And then down to the sub-technique level, we see a lot of spear phishing attachments that come from links that users click on, and by the time they download, if we're doing our job, they'll never get that malware or they'll never get that maldoc. And then we have malicious files and spear phishing links as well. So that's just kind of at the top level how Trinity really tracks. But what MITRE ATT&CK really means to my team on a day-to-day basis is being familiar with the attack matrix or the enterprise matrix, making sure that every formula that comes out has a full MITRE ATT&CK tagging, and then using that as a basis to start a conversation around threat intelligence.
I really like that thought process, right? To being able to kind of use it to qualify what you're doing, why you're doing it, and kind of use that as the language that you can use to kind of track that historically, right? Being able to look back and be like, oh, why did I create that rule? Well, now I've got that information. So I really like that. And I also like the defense evasion comment. That's definitely it's one of the more fun ones from the detection standpoint, and right, especially from like the red team standpoint, because right, it oftentimes gets to the little bit of the feeling of, well, can I defeat you? That goes back to a little of the red and blue sides, which is now
cat and mouse.
not as prominent, but it's still a fun thing to deal with, as like that one like feather in the cap that people always try to go to. So I really appreciate that. That's your favorite. It's got a lot of good things in there. So one of the things that it came up while you were talking, right? You focused on at least in your example, on specific techniques. And so one of the things with attack is that the community had kind of started treating attack as this checkbox thing, right? Being able to get more and more techniques. And coming from the more network side, right, you guys will have your strengths. So how do you kind of bridge that gap with customers that might kind of try to say, okay, what's your value? And it's not necessarily a breadth thing for you guys as much as it might be a depth thing. I mean, you have some breadth there, but like, how do you kind of balance those two concepts in attack coverage from your guys' perspective?
Yeah, the balance is really communicating to customers that we do go very deeply in when we talk about tactics and techniques. Like for us, there is a huge value in covering almost every single initial access method there is that could be, seen on a network and stopped on a network. So as long as my team is covering more and more of those, and we're talking about it and we're describing and we're contributing to like what we're seeing from a network level and stopping, there's value there. But I also have to balance that with the fact that we have to continue moving out in a broader way. So like I described with a malware campaign, I can't describe to a customer our coverage on a malware campaign is just one single thing of us trying to prevent the initial access, because bad guys, evade initial access all the time. That is the cat and mouse game. So we have to be ready for multi stages of any malware campaign. And that's actually the fun part as an analyst. Believe it or not, I play analyst from time to time. That's the fun part, is really trying to, I describe it to my team, trying to break apart the iceberg. If we're successful, we're breaking apart the iceberg, and we're telling customers like, hey, we protect you very deeply against this, but we're also covering you against additional stages.
Yeah, I really like that. That's a wonderful analogy. And I think as the world gets more accustomed to how attacks are chained together, what you're talking about definitely plays a much bigger role. And the fact that you're recognizing the importance of like the initial access stuff, for example, right? Like trying to keep them out is obviously, if you can keep them out, great, you've won. But recognizing that there's going to be cases where you can't, and so how do you handle in that? But balancing that, like so I think that what you've recognized is that like certain techniques and tactics that matter more than others, and so you'll really focus your energy there, but realize that at the end of the day you still have to have that breadth. And so that's a nice way of kind of constructing the balance that you have there. And so that leads us to kind of a understanding what your breadth is, right? Understanding where your depth is. At Tidal, right, one of the things that we're doing is creating a public product registry that allows vendors like yourself to submit their capabilities to us, how you protect, how you detect, how you respond, so on and so forth, to attack techniques. Now we're putting this into the public space because we feel like the community should get exposed to the different ways of doing things. But why did you guys come at this and want to participate in it?
Yeah, so it's an awareness thing as a small company, right? So there's definitely, we want awareness around A, how cool is our tech, and then B, that it has a real impact on your network security and your network hygiene. We really set out to start Trinity and do what we do to stop bad guys. At the end of the day, like period, that's it. And so using the Tidal platform to let people know how we stop bad guys, and what stages of their attack do we stop, and what can we reasonably guarantee that we're protecting you against. And I'm not just talking about giving you a yet another detection stream or yet another alert stream. I'm talking about really preventing something. So like it never gets to you, or it gets to you in a benign way, or we completely modify a command and control session before it gets to the bad guy. Like that is the kind of, I'll call it fun, but also like super high security value that I think network defense is really missing today. And that's what we use Tidal for. And I'm really excited to see where this goes. I will note though, protect is not enough. We have to describe it in a little bit better way there. And it's not just us. There are plenty of network vendors, I'll say maybe in the IPS space, that do prevent. And prevent should definitely be something on the roadmap, should be in the future. I think people have wanted to say we prevent things in various ways for a long time. And being very keyed around detection and response as an industry has set us back a little bit.
Right.
So we need to kind of catch up with the reality that prevention is here, and it's here to stay.
Yeah, and that's a valid concern about, again, with the state of the industry and how we've looked in it. And frankly, like if we just depend on detect, right, you can get really great attack coverage, going back to the point of this call, but how many of those are actually going to be useful? So you bring up a couple things, right? We have to do some of the things that Tidal's looking to do in the future is do more qualification and differentiation around different types of capabilities. Things like what some of the stuff that's been brought up is for detections, right? Understand the difference between an atomic detection or something that requires ML, right? Those are two very different types of capabilities. Similar can be said about different types of protections or preventions and so on and so forth. So we'll look to continue to expand that out so that we can provide more understanding to the end user. Because at the end of the day, I think that's what you guys are participating in this for, why we're doing it. It's trying to provide transparency to the end user. And yeah, we can take our baby steps in terms of here's a simple mapping, but now the question is okay, now we've got vendors that are mapping. We've got the Trinity Cybers of the world coming in and participating. So how can we level that up? How can we make it so that now it's not just about the mapping, it's about the specifics around how? So to that degree, I guess that can kind of lead to the final question that I have for you for the day, which is so when people come to the site or come to Tidal site and look at Trinity's data, and what do you want them to come away with? What do you want them to know about Trinity Cyber's strengths and how the data is represented there, or for that matter, how just anything in that spectrum about what do you really want them to understand about Attack and Trinity Cyber?
I'd like for them to look at our vendor mapping as a way to start talking about how do we protect and how do we prevent things on networks, right? So we talk about a bunch of vendors and they all have their own specific strengths and they all do something. But as an end user, what you're really going to want to focus on is how, like, what products do I trust in my detection stack? What products do I trust in my protection or prevention stack? And like, where am I applying them? Because ideally, you don't want to have duplication. You want to have a vendor that does a specific thing, and being as transparent as we can. And I'm not talking about just Trinity, I'm talking about all vendors on the Tidal platform, being as transparent as we can about where we are today, and then updating where we go in the future is going to be very valuable to those end users. So I think what I want people to take away in Trinity when they see our mappings is we have two products. One of them is an inline, completely preventative network solution. The other one is for files that are submitted to an API where we tell them very valuable information, like is there malware, are there exploits, are there techniques embedded in there? And I want them to apply that in their infrastructure and in their journey to find products wisely. So if they're looking for prevention, well, great. Here's what Trinity Cyber can bring to the table. If they're looking for sending files somewhere to get an answer, here's what Trinity Cyber can answer. If they're looking for authentication mechanisms or protection against DDoS, well, great. Then let's look at another vendor, things like that. Let's just make informed decisions. And that's what I really like about the whole concept of threat-informed defense that you guys are bringing to the table.
I really appreciate all that and appreciate that perspective that you provided here and on the other questions as well. I think that they're really good insights. And so with that, Jeremy, it's been absolutely a pleasure, and we do appreciate Trinity's support of Tidal and being included in the platform and being a launch partner at that. I think that says a lot about you and the organization that you work for. And so with that, thanks to everybody that listened on and hopefully learned a little bit about Attack, hopefully learned a little bit about Trinity, and it's something that you can use as you kind of make your informed decisions going forward. So with that, this concludes this version of the fireside chat with Trinity Cyber, and thank you very much, Jeremy, and goodbye, everyone.